pairing, mobbing and solo, how to get the best out of everyone. So if that drives anybody nuts or gives anyone a headache, tell me and I'll just pop the cable out. Oh, Tom's like sweat set over there. So I got introduced to Agile about, I'm that old, about 20 years ago now, by a colleague back in London, and started on the test-driven development and then would buddy up quite a lot. And the more we buddied up, the better things seemed to go. And then I had a job where everybody had to pair all the time, and we had a pairing ladder and would rotate round. So like Alice and Bob would work together one day, and Bob and Charles the next, and then Charles and Alice again, and rotate round and round and round. And we used to write it down on the wall. Especially when we had the whiteboard on the wall, that was better. They liked that more. And we found that we got quite a good effect out of this. And the more that we buddied up on stuff, and the more we did it as a matter of rote, better and better things started happening. So we ended up convincing ourselves that for 2 people, you got 2.5 people's work output. Because the more you work together, the more the code is the same, the more the style of what you do is the same, the more the attitudes of the team are the same, the more you can then all work with each other. And after a while, you get used to working with each other, so you don't have to like everyone you work with, you just have to work with them. So it helps if you get on, and you can have a nice chat and a laugh, but you don't have to. I worked with one guy who was Asperger's, and he used to say so there was lots of stuff you couldn't joke about with him, because that wasn't what you did. But when you sat and worked with him, you got amazing stuff done, because if you knew how to work with this person, you could get an amazing amount of work done, and very, very focused, and very crisp, and very clean. Because whatever you agreed the team rules were, that was exactly what he insisted on doing. And in one way, I learned more from 3 weeks of pairing with him on one story than I did with working with many other people, because it was so focused. And we were so focused on, these are what the team has agreed to do, let's just do that. So what comes out of that now is some chit-chat from me about how I would describe some of this stuff comes out, and how to write it down. Is that still working? I can't see, but I'm just not looking now, just in case it's off. Thanks, Thomas. And the more you can work together as a good set of people trying to achieve the common goal, then the better the productivity of your team comes out. And I'm going to start sounding now, like, especially with this thing on, like I should be telling us all how to be better people, or on like selling my book about a better life. But that's a lot of it. So me and Anna went to a conference a little while ago with Woody Zuhl, who's a big proponent of mobbing stuff. And he said, it kind of happened by accident. Him and the other people he was working with were just working really well together. So they tried to work out what it was they were doing, so that as they went into different teams in their big organisation, they could carry that with them. So they came up with this kind of phrase, and they called it mobbing, and they kind of worked out what it was about that dynamic that was really, really working. And the main answer you get out of Woody when you talk to him is that, well, you've got to be a better person. You've got to be the one who helps the juniors and helps the next person and communicates well and doesn't try and take over. And I think I've just summarised my entire thing in about 5 minutes, actually. But so let's go through some slides, because actually, as you can tell, I do like the sound of my voice, right? So there's a few rules of thumb I like to use for when we're doing this, and some of this is born out of bitter experience from being in teams where it really didn't work, or there was a very broken dynamic. And you learn as much from those lessons as you do everything else. So again, this is kind of Woody Zuhl's very Buddhist approach to stuff of, well, all the problems you've had in the past, all the terrible teams, all the really bad pairing you had, are all a chance to learn how to do it better the next day and help the next person more, to get more out of the next pair. Because if you can make your team really productive, or your pair really productive, well, as a contractor like me, you'll get asked back, and as a permie, you'll get respect from other people, and you'll be given the juicy stuff to do. Well, at least that's how I've found it, because you're doing good work, and it's a good quality. And as a developer, it doesn't break, and as a DevOps person, your servers always stand up, and that's the goal of all this software stuff. But it's a very, very personal thing, and lots of us aren't in IT to be very personal and friendly. Lots of us are all on the spectrum somewhere. I know I'm quite powerfully OCD about many things. But if you say so and admit it and work that into how you work with people, you can get an awful lot out of things. So here's one of my first rules of thumb. The only people allowed to solo by default are the most experienced devs on the most trivial crap, and only when there's an odd number in the day. So, no, don't have anybody working solo if you can possibly avoid it, because then you're not getting the best out of people, you're not transferring knowledge, you're not communicating, you're not teaching the junior the next thing that they could learn. You're not also teaching yourself how to communicate with those people. But if you have an odd number of people in the team, for example, then make sure the most experienced developer has got the most trivial, boring, ordinary things to do, because they won't make a mess. And they should follow the team standards, and they will follow the coding standards, and they will do everything right, so that when their work then gets reviewed, it's the shining example, even though they were on their own and didn't have someone watching over their shoulder all day. So that's about reducing ego, mine included. I don't know if you can see the grey here. It looks great on my screen. It's kind of a cool colour, but you might not be able to see that, sorry. It's about reducing your own ego. So the person working on their own is at a disadvantage. They're not the team hero. They're the one who's actually taking a hit for the team because they're doing the boring stuff. And so you want to make sure that that's being done well. And everybody else is learning off of each other all day, every day, because then the team productivity spirals up instead of down. You'll find lots of these points, I think, overlap quite a lot. So, next one. I guess you can all hear me at the back. Anna asked me to check that the people at the back could hear, but I didn't know I was going to have this on then. So, and if you've got any questions as we go along, just shout out over the volume here. Right. Pairing works well as the default, but only if the pair are all equal communicators or someone is good at facilitating even-way discussions and pairs are rotated. So this, again, is all these points are related, and they can't not be if you're trying to get the best out of people. So I've got here, as the team code styles, coverage, attitudes, and knowledge will start to coalesce together, the faster, the more you rotate pairs in general, I found up to about 1 time a day. Then it drops off due to context switching costs. So I found, and me and Kev tried this at GE, and he might have a different experience, but we started rotating the pairs like every half day. And in theory, that's a good knowledge transfer for the team, but personally, I found it was too much churn. But if you let people stick together for a whole story for a few days, say a story card's lasting that long, that's a separate discussion, then you don't get the knowledge transfer. But if you sit in the morning, when you're kind of fresh and you're all caffeined up like I am now, and at that point, when Alice was on the story yesterday, she comes off, Bob, who was on it yesterday with us, stays on, Clarice comes on to sit with Bob. They then have to do a handover, because whoever was on it driving yesterday shouldn't be driving today. So you swap the pair over, you also swap the driver over at the same time. Then you have to have a discussion about what you did yesterday. And if you don't transmit enough information to the next person, they can't drive. Well, that forces you to do that. So it's all very well saying, well, you need a handover in the morning between the new pair, but you can make it the case by letting the previous driver not drive the next day. And then, so you can build into sort of some fairly simple little pragmatic approaches that make pairing work better. Now, of course, if you've got a junior or someone who's new, then it's going to slow down initially, but then if you speed that person up and get their knowledge up and up and up and up, then the whole team will speed up. So, again, you have to find the optimum for you. I think, Kev, did you really enjoy the half-day pairing? Was that good for you?
I don't think that far.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a different role then, so yeah, I just go across multiple teams.
Right.
For me, it's useful.
Yeah.
That piece,
So,
but lovely, I can see what you're saying with complex for other people.
yeah. So I wanted to bring that in to show it can be good. It depends who you are and what you're doing. It depends on the team. So this is what I've learned. This is my opinion. And whilst I'm referencing other people I work with, I want to make sure I haven't upset anybody. Right. So, equally well, and not a lot of places do this, you can have mobbing working well as a default, but only if the team are all equal communicators or someone is good at facilitating even-way discussion and mobs are rotated. So if you have more than 2 people on a story at a time, you need to switch in who's coming into that, so you're sharing the knowledge in the team. You're going to get just as, well, not as bad, but almost as much of a silo if you have 3 people working on something for a week and 3 people working on something else for a week. You're going to get knowledge transfer between those sets of people, but you still need to mix it up so that the team knowledge is increasing. So again, I'm saying, got the very similar subnote here. So mobbing works well as a default as the team code and styles and coverage and attitudes and knowledge will start to coalesce, but not always faster than with pairing, as the driver always learns the most. It does solve hard problems fastest. See any caveats about how we communicate. So the more people you have on the problem, and I have thanks to Kev again for this one, because he got us to do some really interesting stuff back in the GE days. You can get more brains on a problem, you all swarm on the production issue, and that fixes it fast. Well, why not repeat that, rather than it just being what you do in a critical situation when something's broken? Why not do that all the time? And then have engineer a situation where nothing's broken, because you all know the product, you all know all the developers in a bigger team, say you've got 10, 12 people, all of them have worked on nearly every story, or at least nearly every feature, and then you've got the common knowledge between everybody. So then, again, the speed that the team can produce stuff at will ramp up, because you're all going to know enough of the context that when you do a new thing, everybody will go, when we break that story down, I know this bit, I know that bit, I know this bit, I know that bit, and everybody is going to be able to contribute. And that's what you want. But again, because the driver always learns the most, then you need to change over who that is, and I would say at least every day. So don't have even a junior person be the driver for a whole story. Give them a day, make sure they've got it, and then let them also experience being the co-pilot and take it round and make sure everybody's being listened to. So, in my experience, soloing is usually a silent, quiet and insidious disaster waiting to happen. You slowly get more and more solos. If you've got lots of people sitting around in a team and they're all being silent and all you can hear is the clacking of a keyboard, and no one's making a joke and no one's going for tea breaks together and nobody's messing about, then what you have is a problem waiting to happen, because you have lots of people who don't communicate. And if they're not communicating with a little bit of a hum in the office, then probably they aren't sharing knowledge with each other. So again, you've got that social aspect of all this, which is not the reason a lot of us got into development and ops and this whole kind of career path, wasn't to be super social, because that wasn't my natural inclination. But if you solo a lot, then the team code and styles and knowledge are going to diverge, leading to bugs, low coverage, more arguments. One of the things I like to say to some of the guys I work with is, if you've got a team coding style, you don't have to like it, you have to do it. So the developers can argue endlessly, and I'm one of them, about what the coding standards should be and what we should do and why it should look like this and why this bracket is better than that bracket.
Tabs.
Yeah, tabs, not spaces. Just don't say both. Because then everybody will get you. So you don't have to like that. You have to do it for the good of the team. And this comes back again to Woody's point about being the better person. Can you be the person who steps back and say, well, what the team needs is this, not what my ego needs, but what's better to train the other people? Because our team will do better work if we all get on, and and that means professionally. It doesn't have to mean personally, but it really helps. So if professionally we are all working well together, we are all doing what our agreed standards say. And if I only like half of the standard, that's fine. That half's fine. I'll suck up the other half because somebody else likes that. And that's a bit like kind of pairing and soloing, and that all kind of captures it in there. You might like working on your own, but that's not best for the team. So try not to do it. And try not to give, as I said, the hard work to somebody who wants to solo, because then they're not going to share what they've learned. And because psychologically we all learn far more from the problems we've solved and the adversities we've faced than we do from something going well, then if you want to get the best out of the team, you've got to share that pain, which means not be on your own. So, a point that I've already snuck in a few times, the most experienced dev should never ever drive. It's best if they sit on their hands or have them bound to the chair. And that's definitely true of me, right? I should really not be allowed these in the office, because I'll be like, oh, let me do that, I'll just show you. But I'm supposed to be the co-pilot, so therefore I'm taking over. So I'm not being a good pair and a good co-pilot and a good trainer or a good professional colleague if I'm taking over from somebody else or grabbing the keyboard off them. So again, my comment underneath here is again with the egos and a big mouth. Right? I'm quite enjoying standing up here telling everybody how it should be done, you know. So that, I have to really watch that tendency when I'm pairing with people, because that's not the same as advising somebody on what might be good or discussing a good plan. So I'm an awful co-pilot, so I have to learn how not to be. People with hands zip tied behind them can't take the mouse and just let me show you that. You know, it's much harder to do that. So, and it's quite hard for me as an experienced developer who's responsible for training up the juniors to sit back and let them make a mistake and then coach them through the right answers so that they learn more for next time. It's very easy to say, oh, the answer is this, even if I haven't touched the keyboard. But then it's much better to say, what do you think the answer is and why is that? And if they produce an answer that works that you wouldn't do, then let's just use that. Don't correct them, because that's just my opinion. And you get a lot of opinions, I find, in development, and that's more like discussing what your favourite flavour of ice cream is. It's still ice cream, it's still nice, just enjoy it. So, keyboards and mice should be swapped around every day at least. So this is like especially true for a mob. If you're just swapping pairs, that's easy to do. You change the driver for the next day. But if you've got a mob, then something like a KVM, where you've got 2 keyboards and 2 mice, is quite good, because then you can take turns, but then you have to be adult about that and not just take one and start doing stuff. It's especially interesting when you've got 2 keyboards and 2 mice and you both start typing at the same time and the whole thing blows up in your face. Then you soon learn that you have to say, can I have a turn now? Can I show you something? I've had an idea. Even better than that is to say, I've had an idea, right, so I'm not going to be the pilot anymore. If you have a good idea, the best thing to do is relinquish the mouse and keyboard, give it to the junior and try and help explain to them what it is, so that the knowledge is transmitted through that person, then tomorrow they will know more. So again, if you've got an experienced person driving, then it's better every few hours to give that keyboard over to somebody else, especially for a really nasty bit of code or script or whatever you've got to do to your system. Because then whoever's driving is going to learn more. And again, I've repeated that point a lot of times, but that really bears out. And again, I've just slipped into this point as well. Anyone with an idea on how to do or fix something should stop driving and become the co-pilot, so it has to be filtered through somebody else. The person driving is going to be the one who's getting the muscle memory and the kind of synaptic responses going, and also they generally will be going slower because you're then free to have the ideas and talk about stuff, but they've actually got to do it at the terminal. So again, with the egos and training the juniors and the drivers learning more, and it's like, if you can't transmit your idea, get the parchment out, turn the monitor off, get rid of the electrics, and do it the old-fashioned way. Get a quill and parchment out. This is one of the best things that you can do as a programmer, is turn the electrics off, get out the whiteboard, get a piece of paper, get a pencil, and discuss your idea. Draw some stuff. So many people are very pictorial learners or have a very pictorial representation in their head. For me personally, if I can't draw a thing with the monitor switched off, it means I don't understand it. Whenever I work on a new system, I, as soon as I can, produce my own kind of, get a bit of A3 out and doodle on it, till I think I've got all the bits down, and I say, does that look like what we're doing? Does that look like what we're trying to produce? Because if it does, I then understand. So crayons are allowed, and me personally think a whiteboard wall is best. You come up and you just start drawing stuff and rubbing it out, and you can all gather round in your mob or your pair and explain it to people. Likewise, if you're soloing on something and you think you finally understood something useful, a great thing to do is stop, draw a quick picture, grab some more people in the team, go to the whiteboard, draw it out and say, I've had this idea, or I think I understand this now, does this work for you guys? Because then you've shared it straight away. You've got that instant feedback that you would have had if you were pairing or mobbing, and then, again, you're transmitting the information through other people and getting that feedback. Because just like in pairing, I was chatting to someone just at the start, when you're pairing with people, you've got a review going on every minute. If you're mobbing, you've got more review going on every minute. So the more people you share out the information with, the more your team will all understand the same things. And if you've got a picture of the system that you can draw from memory, then you probably really have grasped all the salient points and you can work the detail out later. So working at a previous place, once I was like the lead developer, all the new people would be given to me for the first week. So at the start of the first week, I get my picture out on a blank piece of paper, draw it by hand, and say, right, this is the system, these are all the bits in it, I don't expect you to understand this. And I would only consider that I had done my job right if at the end of the first week, that junior person could at least draw a big chunk of that picture by themselves. Because then I had shown them what they needed to do, so that when they went into their next pair the next week, they were carrying with them just the fundamental bits, like the big building blocks. But from that, you can fill in the details. But if you can't give that to the new people, how are they supposed to do good work for you? You can't just give a junior this story to do, code this. It's like, well, where's the context? If you don't know the context, you can't understand the bigger picture. And again, for me, that comes back to how mobbing tends to work really well, because then you've got that picture in everybody's head and you know you're sharing it. So you know, it's probably the same picture. And if it isn't, it tends to work out quicker. So, coming towards the end of the slides that I have, though, clearly I can talk for a very long time. This is all psychologically hard. Again, this is all stuff I nicked from talking to you and Willie before and working with Kev. This is hard, and this was a point that Woody really drove home that I think is extremely valuable. Lots of people, and I've mentioned this before, lots of people aren't in development and this whole kind of IT career to be super sociable. We're all on various spectrums, all of us. Some of us are a bit more in the middle than others. So some people can't cope as well with this. Some people don't respond well to physical proximity with other people, or can't communicate very well, or have bad anxiety, or are shy, or are very OCD, like me. So they need help and assistance. Now, on the other hand, anyone who doesn't want help, you have to out that fact and say, right, people who want help, that's great. You can take them anywhere. You can't buy a good attitude from anybody. So as long as somebody's got a half-decent brain and a good attitude, I frankly think you can teach them to do anything. Those are the people you really want. Someone who's highly technically capable but doesn't want to be helped to be part of the team is much less used to you, because you can't take them anywhere. You can't take them on a journey. You can't make them productive. You might be able to give them things to do, and they might do it what they think is well, but that's not the same as them sharing the information with the team and sharing what the pros and cons of their approach is, or sharing how some things worked and how some things didn't work. You only see their final output. You don't see the journey they took on, the decision path they made, because that then isn't then informing the whole team. So the old, what I would call the old notion of star programmers being parachuted in and soloing on something, no, that's an anti-pattern to me. That's a disaster waiting to happen, because all you're doing is increasing your silos and making it worse and worse. You're better off with a team going through things at a reasonable pace all together, because at the end of the day, they will be able to solve the problems together. So that's kind of somebody who really doesn't want to be helped eventually has to go out. Your star programmer who's paid a fortune, who's bright as anything, but won't communicate what they've done is no use to you. They're going to cause a problem later, because they will just carry the knowledge with them, and they might as well be in a different team. So send them to a different team, because they're not going to help you that much. So tough love, brothers and sisters. Let's try and help each other. Let's all communicate. Let's talk a lot. Let's work through people. So I worked with one guy just in the current job who had really crippling anxiety, but you wouldn't know. He was a lovely bloke. So he got really super anxious about stuff not working and so on. But he wanted to learn, he wanted to help, he wanted to take part, and we wrote some amazing stuff together, because it didn't matter, he wanted to take part in it. I recently, like last year, worked out quite how OCD I am about some things. So I just work it into what I say, I just tell everyone. So then I let myself obsess about the team standards and what the team does and what the team way of doing stuff is, so I actually channel it into something useful. So I helped this guy channel his anxiety into whether the tests had 98 or 99% coverage. So he could get anxious about that, and then suddenly I gave him something to worry about that actually directed his efforts, and his test coverage flew up. See, and now, obviously there are examples where this might not work. I've worked with some people who wouldn't communicate, didn't matter what you did, didn't matter how you restructured a retrospective or a stand-up, they just would not take part. It's like, well, in the end, those people they might as well not be on your team. But most people are, that you can't force everyone to be helped. All your mobs belong to us. I don't know if any of you are as old as me and get that reference, but that's from, that picture looks terrible up there. It looks quite cool over here. Right, that was the end of the slides that I had prepared. I don't know whether I'm over or under time. Anna hasn't shouted at me yet. So. All right, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for bearing with me.